So the issue that we have as a charity is that over the last almost 10 years, we've been delivering a programme which has been focused on school improvement, ultimately around reading, writing and maths. But what became apparent to us over the last 2 years, even before the pandemic, was the importance of well-being in schools, that a frightened and anxious mind will not learn. So we joined forces with an organisation called Emotion Coaching, and we've produced a range of what started out as modules to support schools. And when we say support schools, we mean the staff as well as the pupils themselves. And we run this for 2-year-olds through to 24-year-olds, so it's early years and post 16 in addition to schools. Now the issue is, of course, in the throes of a pandemic, and even before then, schools have much reduced finances. There wasn't the announcement, for obvious reasons, in March about additional funding for schools, and we have been faced in the last 12 weeks with trying to address the issues that the schools have to face, but by using online technology, with some success, I have to say, with some success over recent weeks. So the issue is there is a slight change in emphasis in what we're doing. It's still vision and mission proof. The emphasis is on well-being for the students, for the children and young people. Schools, early years, post 16 are really up against it financially. What we're aiming to do is to fundraise so that we can get at least 50 schools on board with our programme, which has been tested by September. So I'll just pass to Karen.
So we've had some really good development conversations around this. So Sonia's already referred to anxious and frightened minds don't learn. One of the things that we're really starting to push on is that anxious and frightened minds don't teach, and anxious and frightened minds don't lead. And that's very much the sort of the strapline, the focus for the Developing Wellbeing programme, so that it meets the outcomes for schools as they work through post COVID-19. So just to give you a little bit of background and information to that, the principles of this are that we're looking very closely at wellbeing for children and young people, and also the wellbeing of our staff, and that's right the way through from head teachers, governors, teachers, support staff, everybody connected to schools, because what we also are aware of is that in this particular industry there isn't a great deal out there, and COVID-19 has really opened up a weakness there. So we're looking very much at wellbeing across the whole staff and across our children and young people. That's looking at policy development. It's also looking at curriculum development. We're very concerned that there will need to be a policy of blended learning going forwards, which enables schools to be able to cover absence of staff at last minute, but very, very much a blended learning approach going forward. We have the huge asset. Our schools who are already with us are great as far as parental engagement is concerned. They really have strategies and work much more closely with parents and carers. So that's a real asset for our schools, because talking to parents and carers over this period of time is absolutely essential. We will be developing those skills, that piece of work. We'll be focusing very much on troubled families, and it is very much around how can parents support that agenda at home, what does informal learning look like, but really addressing the issue of parents as genuine partners. And as far as our children and young people are concerned, we're looking very closely at intrinsic motivation, so getting our kids back to what does education look like, goal setting, including things around the virus and viruses education. How do we help them? How do we clarify those things going forwards? But very much around attitudes to learning, and looking very much at core strength. We've done an awful lot of work around core strength already, but there's much work to do around emotional resilience, character, and that particular area of work. So that gives you an idea of what that Achieving Wellbeing programme will and how we're going to develop it going forwards. We know that the impact report, we've looked after children. We know that this has a very successful impact on their learning. But this is about developing a programme post and throughout COVID-19 for schools.
Thanks, Karen. I've also noticed that we've got David Gandy with us, so thank you for joining us, David.
Very good. Pleasure.
So if we go to Joffre, and then David, if you wouldn't mind afterwards, just to say a few words before we go out to questions.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely.
So, thank you. Joffre?
Hi. Good morning. Good afternoon. It's really honoured to be asked to join in today. Obviously, as a writer, I'm passionate about reading and books in general, and having spent the last 10 years touring the UK promoting it. But in this current situation, I think we find ourselves with obviously segregation and isolation still, because let's not forget there's a lot of people out there that are still not brave enough to go outside and take risks. And a lot of these are obviously children who are vulnerable and disadvantaged, and they more than ever they need our support and our help. I think yes, at the moment, their emotional health and well-being is really at risk. And I'm a firm believer, and I've seen it, that putting a book into the hands of a child can be as powerful as making sure that they're fed, because reading is at the end of the day it's food for the mind, and if we can put the right book in the right hands and led by the right person, that is such an empowering thing, no matter how young that child is. I think, in amongst all the fundraising, all the issues and the things that we can do out there, just introducing that book, having a volunteer or giving staff or a parent those tools to be able to sit down with a child or a group of children and share a story. And let's not forget, even with the segregation, a book can be shared across miles, across a room, across different rooms, even on the internet like this. So just sharing that story and then raising questions from it can be quite powerful. I also think that there was an item on the news last night that raised the fact that over 3 million children are in families, in single child families. And a lot of those children are vulnerable and alone. And we can't always see that loneliness in a child amongst all the other things. We can't always see when a child is frightened. But sharing a book, sharing a topic, introducing characters, showing that child a little bit of empathy and getting them to understand their empathy with a character, and it doesn't make them feel alone. They realise, I'm like that character. Now, how does that character deal with that situation that I find myself in, the way I feel? So just by doing that, sharing a book where a child can open up to a conversation, and using that book to give that child the strength to be able to think, there are characters in books and probably other people around that feel like me, and get that child talking about their experiences and getting them to feel brave, and to be able to talk about the things they want to. And it's not just about Harry Potter, it's not just about fiction. It's about talking to children about their dreams and their ambitions. and letting them explore books, whether it's dinosaurs and talking about that, or their dreams that they want to take on through childhood. All books can change a child's life, and I think we talk about all sorts of things that fundraising can do, but sometimes it's just that simple of introducing a child to a love of reading and picking a book up. And if we can just make room for that, and show that sometimes it is that simple, introducing a child to reading, that we can support that loneliness, that vulnerableness, and build strength in children through reading.
Can I just say that is absolutely magic what you've just said. It really is magic. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
No, honestly, it's magic. It's absolute magic. All right, can I get some pass to David?
What you just said was incredible. So I totally agree. I'm not only am I part of Achievement for All, but I'm also part of some medical, some well-being, mental well-being charities, especially for men as well. And what you're saying there about getting people to talk is very important for children, but it's also very important for men, of course. And myself being a recent father, and my daughter's 19 months old, we are the first generation of fathers to have had to have a much more integral part to raising their children than, say, my father or my grandfather was. So it was very much down to the mother. The father went off to work, and he might, like my father, just about got home to maybe see us in the bath, or but one of the major things that my dad always did when he did get home was read us a story. So we were always, we always had on, and then he used to, bring in puppets and do all these voices to them and everything else. So I never saw my dad in the mornings. I never obviously saw him in the afternoons, but I always saw him in the evenings when he was integral in our, in our going to bed, making us feel comforted, protected. And he was always still there, even though he, worked every hour. And it is very true. And I've taken that philosophy really back in, reading with my child. And we laugh because in her cot, when she wakes up in the morning, we put books down the side of her cot, and so she has to find her books. And often we find that her, and we're a little bit worried sometimes, because if he doesn't wake us up at 6:30 in the morning, we go in, we rush in, and there she is, kind of reading a book on her own to her teddy bears. So we're very lucky that we're trying to bring her up, and I really thank her mum for kind of all of that, because she's far more academic than me. But we're the calmness from a book is remarkable. She's very upset, and we get one of her books out. Zog the Dragon is one of her favorites, which I've now read 4,000 times to her, and she never gets fed up with it. So what you're saying there is brilliant. Where I've come into Achievement for All, and where I think we've had some success is, I've sponsored my past schools, Sunnymead School, my junior school, and my senior school, and sponsored them and paid for a part of the system, and the school paid the rest. And we've seen a huge achievement and some huge successes there. I've been to the schools myself, and I've spoken to the teachers, and I've spoken to the students, and I think that's a great case study to take forward if we can do something with Achievement for to give to other people in the public eye, as well as other businesses, not just as a fundraising experience, but for them to actually be involved in the process. And what I like about when we talk about me supporting charities or other people supporting charities is sometimes you can donate money, but you can't actually see the effects of where your money is going or how it's being achieved. And I think that's a major importance of charities kind of going forward, is people being a part of it, and they actually see where the money can go. I think we've made such an importance of nurses and clap the carers and everything else. If I was now, we need to put the hero status back into teachers, because they are putting themselves at risk in some ways. I'm not probably denying that. I hope the risk isn't very high, but they are. And I think we're very lucky that we're not having to, in many ways, homeschool our child, where she's only 19 months. But I know lots of my friends who have had to homeschool have now got so much respect for teachers, for keeping the child's attention span. They've so many of them said we've kind of given up now because the attention span, and we've given up on ideas. So we have so much respect for teachers because we're never in the classroom to see how everything works. We only, we talk to teachers and go to parents' evening. So I think almost teachers need to be made this almost hero status now, that they're a major part, along with nurses, along with frontline workers, to educate our children. And the reason I love Achievement for All and why I support it is because I believe so much in education. I believe so much starts in education, and I believe that everyone should have as fair an education and as equal opportunity as possible. And I think we're seeing in the world at the moment, especially with everything that's going on, that people don't have that that equality and moving forward. So that's really in a nutshell at the moment of how I'm involved in sort of Achievement for All. And something we've always noticed in Achievement for All as well is that we can say about reading and we can say about working at home, working for our children, but obviously, Sonia, you'll prove this, but we've had cases where the parents can't read themselves. The parents can't, don't know about maths and they can't read. So and that to me was an eye-opener. I never even thought of that before Achieving for All, that the parents themselves can't read and they can't do the maths and they can't help them at home. And I think a lot of people, and I'm probably because I'm in a privileged position, I've never thought of that. So I think those elements need to be brought forward to people, saying, well, homeschooling's fine, and it's and a lot of people are in a great position that they can, with private schools, have Zoom meetings and everything else, but not everyone has computers, not everyone has iPads, the parents can't read. So I think that element needs to be brought into the forefront of people, that it's not as straightforward as we all, as the way I thought I saw it before, and it's opening people's eyes to it. But as I said, sort of making the teachers a part, along with the nurses and the frontline teachers. I would be quite happy to clap for the teachers on a Thursday night if it was me, if they're all going back. But that's I'm not sure if everyone else feels the same. But I would, and I think it would encourage teachers to go if they're a bit scared of going back to school, to go back to school and teach our children in that respect, because they are putting themselves in a less dangerous way than the nurses, but they are the first ones back, pretty much back to having to go back to normality, or some sort of normality anyway.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, very well said. Very well said. So I think 3 points that I would like to draw together, and then just go for any quick questions. One is that we do have a solution. Right? We know what the issue is. It's not just the well-being of the children, it's the well-being of the adults around the children. So that's the parents, the carers, the leaders and the teachers. That we have coaches within Achievement for All who are very well trained on emotion coaching, as well as the more academic side of developing teachers and parents and carers and the wrap around the child. The third point I'd like to raise is none of this can happen without the support of, whether it's a funder or it's somebody who can provide pro bono support, but we definitely need that investment in Achievement for All. And the points that David has made about the funding of a school and funding people that you know and you recognise and you've experienced and you can see what's happening with the funding, I think is a point that's really well made. And I think that's something that we can take forward from here. So those were the main 3 points. If we just go to anybody that's got any questions, I'll just ask Nasa Siabi. Have you got any? Thank you for joining us. Have you got any questions or comments that you want to make, add?
No, I'm actually listening intensely. Thank you very much. It's been a very interesting and great sort of session to understand the real pain points within the schooling. And you're absolutely right. Supporting the parents and the kind of people who are looking after the education is as important or even more important than the children, because I do come across that across the whole range of industries, sectors, whether it's employment or education. So I do absolutely, buy into everything you guys are talking about. So
thanks, Nessa.
Thanks for including me. And
Charlotte?
No, I just wanted to say it's just fantastic to hear such passionate, eloquent views on what we can do, and I'm absolutely fully supportive, and I'm really keen to hear how we can help this and move it forward.
Thanks, Charlotte. Just finally then, John Cope, you're with us.
That was a really passionate sort of conversation going on there. I think we need to make sure that we are riding that wave as we go from kind of crisis and panic to now recovery. And we're sort of getting out of it now, and so much of the conversation is moving on to how actually kids can catch up, how you can kind of correct all of the damage and all the falling behind that's happened in the last few months. So no, it's fantastic to listen and to sort of be part of that recovery phase.
So huge thanks to David and Joffre for speaking. That's absolutely fantastic to hear from you, and thanks to others that have been joining. Well, I'm personally a passionate believer in what both you have said, in the sense that my mother was illiterate, my father only learnt to read when he was in the army. I know what it's like to live in a household without books, and that calm that reading brings, and the way that you explained is just a beautiful calm, isn't it? And that's what we want for everybody, to have that in their mind. So thank you very much, everybody. Take care, and we'll be in contact. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.